The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
You're listening to Canary Cry News Talk. Today is November 26, 2019, episode 166. And this week, snakes get leggy and moo-moo matrix. My name's Basil.
This is Gonz. Welcome to the podcast where we report disturbing news through the comforting views of woke Canarians.
Very good. I gotta say, I think this is my favorite episode title in the history of the show.
Snakes get leggy and moo-moo matrix. What could we be possibly be reporting on this week as newsworthy that garnered a title such as this?
I don't know. It's going to change everything, though. But first, Gonz, let's jump into a Flippy update.
Okay, this is kind of like a trifecta, so we're going to do, okay.
Triple threat.
Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
I'm for the robots.
Speaking of the beast system. Beast system.
Ooh.
The triple threat jingle. Very nice. Yeah. Gonz, this is coming from Wired.com. And the headline is, "The case for sending robots to daycare like toddlers."
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Like
we're sending them
Pinocchio.
to work.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we send them to work. We might as well send them to daycare as well. But here we go. The article reads, "Human babies don't seem to make a good amount of sense." Evolutionary speaking. Yeah, this is a very solid first sentence. Human babies don't make sense. They're helpless for many years and not particularly helpful either. They can't pitch in around the house or get a job, but in reality, these formative years are critical for training nature's most remarkable brain. With the simple act of play, children explore their world, adapting themselves to a universe of chaos. Universe of chaos.
Yeah.
Kids can run circles around even the most advanced robots on Earth, which still only function well in strictly controlled environments like factories, where they perform regimented tasks. But as the machines slowly become more advanced and creep deeper into our daily lives, perhaps we do well to let them grow up. In a way, argues UC Berkeley psychologist and roboticist Alison Gopnik. Quote, "It may be that what we really need is robots that have childhoods," she says. "What you need is kind of a little helpless, not very strong robot that can't break things very much and is actually being taken care of by somebody else, and then have that turn into a system that is capable of actually going out into the world and doing things." Gopnik's proposal is a radical departure from how researchers typically get a robot to learn. One common method involves a human taking a robot through its paces, move by move, so that it learns how to, say, pick up a toy. Another approach has a robot trying random movements and earning rewards for successful ones. Neither option gets a robot to be particularly flexible. You can't train it to pick up one kind of toy and expect it to easily figure out how to grasp another. Children, by contrast, react with ease to new environments and challenges. Quote, "Not only do they go out and explore to find information that's relevant to the problems they're trying to solve," says Gopnik, "but they also do this rather remarkable thing, playing, where they just go out and do things apparently for no reason."
They have a very interesting view on children, but go ahead.
I know, they're pointless and what they do is stupid. There is a method for their mania. They're curiosity-driven agents building a complex model of the world in their brains, talking about children here, allowing them to easily generalize what they learn. When robots are programmed to learn from a strictly scored goal, with points for good behavior and demerits for bad ones, they're not encouraged to do things out of the ordinary. Quote, "They're kind of like kids that have helicopter-type parents who are hovering over them and checking everything they do," says Gopnik. "That kind of close attention might get the kids into Harvard, but it won't prepare them for what follows." Quote, "When they actually get there and they have to do something else, they fall apart and don't know what to do next." Gopnik adds, "Giving robots a sense of curiosity Play without real purpose could help them also deal with the unknown. In the lab, Gopnik and her colleagues have been figuring out how this might work in practice. They need to somehow quantify how kids go about solving problems with play, so they let kids play. And things get tricky immediately because, quote, they're little kids, Gopnik says. We ask them what they think about something, and they'll give you a beautiful monologue about ponies and birthdays, but not anything that sounds very sensible. This person is no wonder they're in robotics. They
traumatized or something.
Find human children more difficult than developing killer robots. Just a couple more paragraphs here. They've found one solution is communicating with custom designed toys that, for instance, only work when kids stacks blocks on them. Quote, since we're designing the toy, we know what the problem is that the children are having to solve, and we know what kinds of data they're getting about the problem. Because we are the ones who are controlling what the toy does, Gopnik says. What, for instance, are the inferences the kids are making about how the toy works? They've run some of the same experiments on adults as well and found that children are better at solving problems than adults, especially when a toy works in a weird way. Kids appear to more readily stumble on the solution by playing around, seemingly illogical fiddling that in the end lands on an answer. Give robots the same power, and we might better understand how both machines and children learn. Quote, by trying to train the robot to do it, we could get more insight into how children are doing it, says Gopnik. And then by studying how children are doing it, we can get ideas about how we could get a robot to do it.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Some really good circular logic there, Gopnik. Perhaps one day the robot that helps around your house will have first grown up in a laboratory daycare center, learning by play. All the fun and games with none of the soiled diapers. Yeah, so, I think that the real plan here, Gons, is to replace all children with robots.
I'm for the robots.
And you
That's
know what?
right.
This is the sentiment, the thinking here is kind of disturbing too, because not just the underlying, sense of, hatred towards young children this author seems to possess, some trauma maybe from their lifetime or something. I don't know.
At least some sort of bias.
Yeah, a little bias, but also...
Children are useless and stupid, and I don't know why they even exist. I need more robots.
And you know what this is going to do is really tap into the market of people that either don't want human children or can't have human children, and give them an opportunity to have that experience of something like a human, but actually you're benefiting the robotic overlords, But
I love this idea of robot daycare.
well,
I love it in a way that I'm terrified for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it reminds me of a Kevin Kelly quote. I think it was the book What Technology Wants. He's the co-founder of Wired.com, and which makes sense since this article.
Yeah.
And he said, quote, humans are the reproductive organs of technology. So, he had this idea that humanity is sort of the blueprint test net for the main AI super botnet or whatever. And, it all ties back to eugenics too. I want to throw this in there just because I love this clip of Margaret Mead, and I think we should just make it something we use every episode. And I think we used it last episode. This is Margaret Mead.
We should invite fewer people to be born.
It's good philosophy.
Yeah. Margaret Mead, the infamous sort of progenitor of Planned Parenthood.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
we should invite less humans to be born and send the robots to daycare. So there you go. Not only are they taking our jobs, but they're taking our kids' jobs. Playing is no longer for human children.
We have some other news here. That's are you done with the other one?
Yeah, hit it.
Oh, okay.
It's gotta be biblical.
All right, this is the Jerusalem Post, but it's also something that was sourced by Science Advances. Is the Bible right? Newly discovered fossils show snakes had legs. Leggy snakes.
Ooh.
The biblical story of the forbidden fruit, which discusses how the snake persuaded Eve to taste it, and how she and Adam, who also ate from it, were subsequently banned from the Garden of Eden by God, is probably one of the most well-known narratives in the history of humankind. As described in Genesis, the snake also received divine punishment. Quote, "You will crawl on your belly and eat dirt all the days of your life," God tells the serpent, implying that before the event, the animal had legs, similar to many others. Now, a new study published in Science Advances on Thursday has shed light on the life of snakes' legged ancestors. Several fossils of an extinct snake group named Najash, dated back to 100 million years ago, were recently uncovered in Patagonia, Argentina. The group is named after the word Nakash, that both in biblical and modern Hebrew indicate the snake, which is interesting, Basil, because we've learned from Dr. Michael Heiser that word Nakash in the adjective form or use can also means the shining one, or shining brightly. And
or Lucifer.
Or Lucifer, yeah. So the snake that ties back into the book of Revelation, which is identified as Satan. Yeah, so interesting. As reported by the New York Times, the fossils, which include several skulls, seem to suggest that snakes might have lost their front legs millions of years earlier than their hind legs. And some of these quotes are just pretty interesting here. Quote, "The skull is now the most complete Mesozoic snake skull known and preserves key data on ancient snake anatomy," researcher leader Fernando Garberoglio told the New York Times. The notion that snakes started off as four-legged animals has been accepted by scientists for several years, although, according to the Times, no fossils have been found to corroborate the theory. Prior to the Patagonia extraordinary discovery, researchers thought that a two-legged phase was at most transitional between four legs and a limbless body. Now it appears that the transition might have lasted dozens of millions of years. I like how they just kind of assert that. Like, well, they were four-legged, and then they're no-legged, and then in between there was a time when they were two-legged.
Well, it's interesting because there's an interesting sort of conflict here, which is they're saying, the biblical account of the serpent ends up being correct, everybody. That's fantastic. But then, sort of contradicting the commonly held biblical timeline. So they're kind of having it both ways there, it seems like. Because the question then arises, well, then how did these biblical people know that snakes had legs if by the time 6,000 years ago snakes would not have had legs?
It's funny too, this article also sort of confirms the reptilians, because check this out. I'm going to finish the article here. Snakeness is really old, and that's probably why we don't have any living representatives of four-legged snakes like we do of all the other lizards. Michael Caldwell, a vertebrate paleontologist at the University of Alberta and co-author of the study, explained to the Times, quote, "Snakes probably were one of the first lizard groups to start experimenting with limblessness."
Ooh, experimenting. They had some
with
some leggy scientist snakes running experiments in cute little lab coats.
But with limblessness. So they're like, well, what is it like to not have four legs or whatever,
Let's give it a try.
Yeah, let's chop them off.
You know what's great? Slithering on the ground. You know what's getting in the way of that? These darned gams of mine.
But what's really intriguing is that they were also very clearly showing the characteristics of their skulls, which are their specialization, he added. Yeah. So, okay, there you go. The studies are in. Reptilians were walking around, Basil, and they were experimenting on themselves. Bible's true.
What a strange story.
And
and it sounds like they're coming up with this based on assumptions from the skull of a fossil. A fossil of a skull.
Yeah, the snake skull.
Just the skull.
Yeah.
How do they tell if there's legs just by the skull?
Oh, I'm sure there's patterns or shapes and people.
They're professional assumption makers,
professional assumptioners. Hey, I'll assume for a living.
I guess we're kind of like professional assumption makers.
Not really. I mean, we've documented our claims.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gonz, are you ready for what quite possibly might be the best story we've ever reported on?
Well, give me a second here. Yes, I'm ready.
Hit me with that jingle. That's right. Engadget.com. Cows wearing VR headsets might produce better milk. That's right, folks, and make sure to check out this link. The picture at the top of this article has to be on the episode art. It's the best picture that's ever been taken.
I was already going to put a cow with a VR headset on, but they did it for me.
Yeah, no photoshopping required. This is real
photo.
Human existence now. We have this photo of a cow with a VR headset. It's not just humans who can benefit from VR. Moscow area farmers strapped modified VR headsets to cows to see if it improved their mood. And of course, their milk production. There's something, Gonzo, there's something about the fact that these farmers are Russian that makes this even more delicious. The project subjected cattle to a simulated summer field with colors tuned for the animals' eyes, giving them a decidedly more pleasing landscape than a plain, confining farm. And yes, the headsets were adapted to the structural features of cows' heads so that they could see properly. It appears to have worked, at least on a basic level. The first test reduced the cow's anxiety and boosted their overall sentiment.
Nice.
Sentiment? A cow's sentiment?
How do they measure
How do you... Well, you get
he's wagging his tail. He's happy. Look at him.
Trained psychoanalyst to come in. You put the cow on a nice Shea lounge and ask it about its childhood and how it feels about its life today, and you will get their overall sentiment. While it's not certain how well this affects
their mood.
Thank you for taking the show to a screeching halt for that very, very good joke. That will go down in the Hall of Fame. While it's not certain how well this affects the quality or volume of milk, there are plans for a more, quote, comprehensive study to answer that question. The research begs a few questions. Yeah, you don't say. Why not just put the cows in fields more often? How do you deal with battery life? And is there a risk of disturbing cows when you take their headsets off and show them dreary reality?
They're gonna get depressed all over again. You're just fooling these poor
PTSD.
cows.
Yeah, see, you take off the headset and they're forced to see the world as it really is.
They start migrating towards the slaughterhouse. They're like, this is...
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you better keep that VR headset on forever. There's cow heads are going to start showing up in the butcher with the VR headset still on. In a sense, it's a solution to a problem humans have created. I'm sorry. I can't get through this. Those issues aside, this could be an option for farms where summery fields just aren't available or where existing techniques like piping in pleasing music might not be effective. Just don't expect a bovine version of Beat Saber anytime soon. Oh, man. So there you go, Gons. We're going to be putting the cows in the Matrix in order for them to create more efficient fuel in the form of milk for us. It is literally a cow version of the movie The Matrix.
We need to find the Neo cow, and we need to get to him as soon as possible, extract him early, tell him what's going on, you know.
Hey, Gons.
Yeah.
Cow Neo is played by Keanu Reeves.
Welcome to the lowly 30s, Basil.
I'm just getting my dad jokes all set up.
Yeah, you're dabbling. It's a slippery slope, I tell you. You start going down. It's kind of funny for a while, and then after a while, you're like, oh wow, I'm really in this thing.
It feels good though.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand the compulsion. Now.
It only has to be funny to you, and you don't care that it's not funny to everybody else, but you make them suffer through it. That's how it works.
Yeah. So speaking of which, everybody make sure to email facelikethesun@gmail.com with all of your cow matrix puns and jokes. Again, that's facelikethesun@gmail.com. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, is there anything else to say about this? I mean, it is twisted. I like how they do end the article with like, well, we did create the problem, and this is one way to fix it. I mean, we could just be better at farming, but instead we should just slap a Band-Aid on this problem and help the cows out.
Well, how much of an effect do they really, I guess you kind of went over that, but the visuals and not kind of the environmental effects of the weather, the temperature, all that kind of stuff.
The overall sentiment of the cows has improved, Gonzo.
All right. If they're getting more milk and there more people getting fed, I suppose, strap it on.
Well, that's what I love. They don't even know if they get more milk or anything. They just assume the cows are happier.
It makes no sense.
Their overall sentiment is improved.
How do they even know that the cows are even being able to experience or seeing actual...
That's a great question. I mean, they got to be experiencing something. They made a point to say that it's a finely tuned piece of equipment for the cows. Structural features, meaning just their bones are different,
right? And how their eyeballs sit and capture.
But here's the thought that I love. They had to basically create an entirely new prototype for a VR headset. And this headset was probably manufactured in a factory in China.
Yeah, that's true.
That already produces VR headsets. And so there had to be a Russian engineer or a Russian businessman or something talking to a Chinese factory owner.
Like blueprints, like CAD
the
files.
Chinese guy is like, what is this for again? And the Russian guy's like, yes, it is for matrix for cow. It make much milk, better sentiment. And Chinese guy's like, whatever, your money still spends, I guess. Let's whip up some cow VR headsets for these crazy Russians.
It's the new world order, Basil. We're all cooperating.
I know. We're making it happen, Gons. All right. You got something to take us out on?
I think so. I think we got one of these this week.
Nephilim update. Nephilim update. Nephilim update.
This is actually
we're back.
It's a book that I saw out there being, I don't know if it was published a couple years ago, but it's definitely making the rounds again. This is on webwire.com. Gloria and Robert Mascarelli raise controversial questions about God, science, President Trump, and the Nephilim in new book. And it says here...
This sounds like our podcast.
Kind of, yeah. It's interesting, although I saw like one kind of thing that I didn't necessarily agree with, but interesting. President Trump, Nephilim, or man of renown? I guess it was published in 2019, Christian Faith Publishing. Wow. By Gloria and Robert Mascarelli, aims to answer the questions that bother Christians from time to time.
Is Trump a Nephilim? How? I mean, I guess it's worth asking.
During his time, or it says here, quote, during my business trips as an antiques dealer, as a known Christian, I was asked many questions by other antique dealers who shared dinners with my wife, Gloria, and I after the close of the antique show each day. At the time, I had a pretty orthodox approach to what I believed in the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and the universe. Since then, I have grown in my beliefs. My ideas changed to what some might consider a rather unorthodox approach to my faith, which will be revealed in this book. Robert aims to give a view of why Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God, is all-powerful and all-loving in spite of all the atrocities that have occurred and are still occurring. He also discusses at length the proper name of God, the second chance theory, post-mortal evangelism. That's the one I was like, never heard of that one. Or at least in the surface reading of that, I don't agree with it, but it's something that I've never really dug into too much. And then the reality of the influences of Satan, the current scientific advances that pose a threat to humankind, and the Nephilim, among many other topics in President Trump, Nephilim, or men of renown. Particular attention is given to the role of the Nephilim, who are discussed in the Old Testament as the giants of old, etc., etc. And it says down here, The authors express an overall favorable impression of Trump, though they disagree with him on some aspects. The title is a prompt for the idea of how people's behavior could reflect whether they are the genetic descendants of Nephilim, who in biblical times were the hybrid children of human mothers and fallen angels. Quote, having President Trump in office as the defender of religious freedom in our country after so many years of our religious freedom being threatened looked very positive, along with all the vows he promised to accomplish during his campaigning. Yet, some of his past behavior seemed to represent some of the negative Nephilim traits that we discussed earlier in our book. It seemed the right time to bring Bob's opinions to light. Read more about Gloria and Robert Mascarelli's theories and answers to controversial questions about God and Trump in President Trump, Nephilim, or Man of Renown.
Nephilim update. Nephilim update. Nephilim update.
All right, everybody, that's about all we got for today. Now, here's the thing. If you are just so sad, like I am, that this episode is over, you can head to patreon.com/CCNT. And here's the thing. We do an additional episode of Canary Cry News Talk every single week, and you can get that through the Patreon. That's patreon.com/CCNT. We've got a lot of options for this week's bonus episode. We've got some Babylonian fake news. We've got a Trump challenge from Cyborg. Apparently aliens smell like farts is an actual piece of news that's out. I might talk about Cybertruck a little bit. I don't know. We'll see how we feel. And I don't know. And some even more scary eyes in the skies from the military. So if any of that interests you, or if you just want to hear to the sweet dulcet tones of Basil and Gon some more, you can head over to patreon.com/CCNT for Canary Cry News Talk. Get your bonus episodes there and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. We got merch. We got, basically merch and bonus episodes. So go check it out. And it supports the show. We don't believe in selling your attention for our own personal gain. And that being said, if you want the show to keep going, or you find any value whatsoever from listening to Canary Cry News Talk, head over to patreon.com/CCNT. It's the only way that we can keep doing the show. Now, Gons, here's the thing, buddy. If you got friends who are still out there getting their news from Facebook, getting their news from the mainstream, you need to grab them by the cage and shake it.
He didn't kill himself.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
That was going Slim Jim.
That's right, everybody. Let your friends and loved ones know this Thanksgiving, as you are sharing that patriotic turkey and the stuffing and the sweet potatoes. Make sure to tell them that Canary Cry News Talk is their news source for news with biblical views and a bunch of other weird stuff. You can go ahead and tell them about the Moo Moo Matrix.
I was going to say,
definitely. Snakes
have legs and cows have VR goggles now.
Yes, it's just occurring to me that this is the episode that your family members are going to listen to when you tell them about Canary Cry News Talk and how this is the place to be. Make sure to tune in next week, folks. But until then, think outside the cage.